Hey, it's Emily Miller. I'm at my studio today and I wanted to show you a makeup tutorial on a colorful spring eye makeup look. Okay, so before I start every eyeshadow application, I use a primer. So I'm going to prime her lids, and I'm using the Stay Don't Stray Eyelid Primer by Benefit in light to medium. So I'm going to apply it with a brush, and I'm going to let the first layer dry, and then I will apply a second layer and let that dry. Once that's dry, I will start with her eyeshadow. So I'm using the MAC 213 brush with the Creme de Violet shadow color, and I'm putting that on her lid. This color needs to be packed on pretty heavily, so you're gonna have to layer it. You might have to do 2 or 3 times to get it to really show up vibrantly. So I'm not going to take it all the way down to her lash line because I'm putting eyeliner there and I don't want to have to put the eyeliner over the shadow. So I am going to cover her entire lid, and I'm going to go all the way to the outer where you would normally put a darker color. I'm going all the way out with this color. And then I'm not going to take it all the way into the inner corner because I'm putting a different color there. So the next, I'm going to use the Crown crease brush and the Saddle matte color, and I'm going to put that color in her crease. I'm actually going to lift up a bit on the brow so I can get in there. I don't want to go too high on the crease. So I'm lifting so I can get right in there. I'm using circular motions. That way it blends better. I want it really, really blended in with the Creme de Violet. So I'm focusing a little more on the outer corner. I am going over the entire crease. I'm going across the entire crease, but focusing a little more on the outer corner. So if Taylor opens her eyes, you can actually see where the shadow goes. Hers isn't completely open. Completely open would be like this, to where I could see everything. So hers is it does fall a little bit. So when you're applying a crease color, sometimes I'll tell the client to look straight ahead and keep their eyes open, and then I can apply the color exactly where I want it to go. The last eyeshadow color I'm using is the Trick by Urban Decay. I'm going to use this spray by MAC called Prep and Prime. So I wet the brush, I'm dipping it into the shadow, and so the consistency is actually, it's wet shadow now. I'm having her look down to the left, and I'm going to apply right in that corner. And then you can close. And I'm just feathering it out lightly. Then I'm going to have her look up. I'm going to come down just a V right in that inner corner. And if you go down too far, that's okay. That's why we have the clean brush to clean it up. But go ahead and look down to your left one more time and see how it's packing on more concentrated than it would without the spray on the brush. Okay, so I'm using the Kiss Shy Lashes. The reason I'm using those is I want more volume in the middle for her, so these are the same length all the way across. So I'm going to first take this off and measure. I'm going to take it off this plastic palette, and I'm going to measure it against her eye. I always like to cut from the outer corners of the lash. So I'm having my client look down, but keeping her eyes open while she's looking down. I don't want to go all the way out, and I don't want to go all the way in. And so I just need to cut a little bit off the ends. So I'm using the Duo glue, and I use the white, and the reason being, I do a lot of bridal parties, I do a lot of commercial work, I do a lot of faces, and I was finding that the black glue, people were having sensitivities to it. So I'm just putting the glue right along the lash strip. I let it dry about 30 seconds. I like it to be tacky and not wet, because if it's wet, it slides all over the lash line. So I need it to be tacky but not wet. So it's about 30-40 seconds, and then I'm ready to put it on. Okay, so I'm having my client look down. I'm gonna start from the outer corner and I hook it and then I roll in, slowly tapping right along that line, right along her lash line, not on the lid, staying below the lid, but where the lash meets the lid. If I need to get in the inner corner, I tell my client look the opposite direction, so look down to her left, and then it slides right in. And then look straight down, and don't look up until I feel like it's dry, so it doesn't hit the lid. All right, so I'm applying her top liner with the Stila waterproof liquid eyeliner. I'm going to go ahead and lift up on her eyebrow so I can take all the wrinkles out of her eyes, and I tell my client to close their eyes. It's a lot easier when you have a false lash to go on top of it. It's harder when there's no lash there. So I'm going to go right along her top line, right along that lash, and just paint a very thin line. This product will mess up so easily. You have to have a super steady hand. So I have the line drawn. The next thing is the wing. So when I draw a wing, I start with my line, and then I'm going to take imaginary lines. So let's say there was a line right here, and I was drawing an imaginary line extending from her bottom lash line and going upwards, up towards her, really towards the end of her eyebrow, which is going to angle it like this. So then I'm going to draw that, and then I'm going to connect this part into the wing. So I'm lifting up, and I'm going to start a little further back. And then I'm going to fill in anything that is not totally straight. Okay, so the eyeliner is done on top. I'm going to put the Mountain Air by MAC on bottom. So remember that line I drew upwards? I'm going to pretend that I'm connecting it with the Mountain Air and go right along that bottom lash line. But I'm not going to go all the way over. I'm just going to go to the middle of her eye. So if I were to draw a line down, straight down the middle, that's probably where I'm going to stop. I want to feather it out though. I don't want it to come to a hard stop. All right, so I did, so I put the Mountain Air on bottom, and I'm going to put the engraved in her waterlines. So when I put it in her top waterline, I tell the client to look down, and I lift on the lash a bit, and I go right under there. So to get the bottom waterline, I have her look up. I'm going to pull down a little bit, and I'm just going to fill in. Again, do it maybe in sections so the client is not freaked out by a swipe on her under eye. Okay, when I curl my client's lashes, I tell them to look down. I lift up on the brow. I take the curler on the outer lash, roll it in, make sure all the lashes are in there, hers and the false lash, and then I clamp down. All right, and then open. So see how it makes a difference in the lift? I'm just using the Maybelline Great Lash Mascara waterproof in Very Black. I buy these wands off Amazon. They have the pink tip. I'm telling my client to look down. I'm pulling up on the eye, and then I tap in as close as I can get to the lash line. It's almost like I'm painting them one by one, or clump by clump. And then I can drag it through to the tips. But I want to make sure, since she's a blonde, I want to make sure I can get all her lashes colored with the mascara so you don't see a difference between the false lash and her lash. All right, so I'm brushing her brows down because I want to see her natural brow line and where it goes. And I'm just going to fill in any areas that are spotty or need a little color. So I don't want to get heavy in the front. I'm going to focus mainly on the middle to end. I do upward strokes, really short upward strokes, very light. Apply it, don't use a heavy hand or you're going to get a really strong brow, unless you want a strong brow. Right now I don't. I prefer a softer one. Now, after I fill that in, I'm going to go ahead and brush through it. Okay, so I'm looking at the final eye look, and the only thing I'm seeing is I would like a little more contrast here. So I'm going to use the Urban Decay, same palette I used previously with the Trick, and I'm going to take the color Strange and the packing brush, the 213 MAC brush, and I'm going to go right under her brow bone, starting here, and go ahead and get a little more light color there. Because what that does is it just creates more of a contrast, and it pops the eye more. I always do my lip color last, and I've decided against what I initially said because I think it's too strong for the look, because her eye turned out a little stronger than I initially thought. So I'm going to do a more nude lip. I'm using Bite Beauty Honeycomb, and I'm still going to use the NARS Gold Digger lipstick over it. So I'm going to tap this in with my lip brush. I'm tapping it in because I don't want a real defined look. So when I have a more defined liner and a defined eye, I want to keep other elements not as defined, at least on this look. After putting that wash of color on her lips with the Bite Beauty Honeycomb, I'm going to put some NARS Gold Digger gloss over it just to give it a little soft, just to soften it so it's not so matte. Again, I'm going to tap this in. I'm not going to just swipe a big blob of gloss on her. I'm actually going to just tap it lightly in. I don't want it super glossy, just a little bit. So when I look at a final look, I go back in and see where it needs work. And I think this is very important because it's not always going to be perfect how you do it initially. You have to go back in, check and see if there's any tweaks to be made, anything to be added, more contrast. It's hard to take away, especially if you have a client who's a lighter makeup wearer and then you're doing something too heavy. So always start light. You can always build on the look. All right, well, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.